You see, my plan was to play through Fire Emblem Genealogy, the Holy War, and Fire Emblem 776 for the month of March. But after being only 10 hours in and through the prologue chapters 1 and 2, I kind of decided to push it back a bit.
Genealogy of the Holy War is a big game, and I completely underestimated it, so that's on me. I also didn't want it to take over my whole life for a while, especially coming off the heels of Mystery of the Emblem.
So today, I'll be reviewing the dual releases of the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons and the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages for the Game Boy Color.
Released back in 2001, they were developed by Capcom and published by Nintendo. Capcom has made a total of 4 Zelda games, the 2 Oracle games we'll be talking about, and on the Game Boy Advance, they made the Minish Cap and 4 Swords.
From what I remember when I played these on my 3DS about 5 to 6 years ago, they were entirely different games. I mean, I've only progressed a little through seasons and even less through ages. But basically, I'm going to these blind as I don't really have any recollection of them.
My decision to play these 2 games may be out of convenience, but they're also for my mental well-being after Chapter 2, Crisis in Agustria, took a whole weekend to complete, which just really made me miserable and lose my patience.
So by God did I need to pick me up. So join me as I go over the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. Here's some backstory about my history with Zelda.
Ever since the age of 6, I have absolutely loved the Zelda series and it tends to bring me great joy. I first played Spirit Tracks on the DS and I remember loving it so much. Then I played Skyward Sword on the Wii and I loved everything, especially the motion controls. For the following 5 years until Breath of the Wild, I bought and played every Zelda game on the 3DS and Wii U, with an additional 4 playthroughs of Hyrule Warriors.
Look, the Wii U didn't have much, so don't judge. I generally enjoyed most of them, completing Zelda 1, The Wind Waker, Minish Cap, whatever. I basically played all of them, and I enjoyed most of them, yet I never completed the Oracle games. I did, however, read the Oracle games-based mangas. I grew up a Nintendo boy, with Zelda being the series I cared for the most. As I got older though, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, and Xenoblade kind of took over, but my love for Zelda never really faltered. Other than that, I mean, it's the 35th anniversary, so I decided that maybe now is the best time to play through the 2 games that I've always wanted to finish.
These 2 games are very similar, but are also distinct enough that they're considered 2 different games. The first one I played, Oracle of Seasons, follows Link as he's warped away from the Kingdom of Hyrule and gets thrown into the land of Holodrum. Here he meets a dancer named Din who turns out to be the Oracle of Seasons. After a dance, the General of Darkness, Onyx, yes, that is his actual name and title, summons a tornado and blasts everyone away. He imprisons Din in a blue crystal and buries the Temple of Seasons, throwing the Seasons in Holodrum to total disarray and bring destruction to the land. It's up to Link to get the 8 Essences of Nature, find and restore the Rod Seasons, and restore order to Holodrum. Overall, it was alright.
I'll go more in depth in a bit, but understand this. Oracle of Seasons has much more of a combat focus, while Oracle of Ages has much more of a puzzles focus. Despite this, I really struggled with the puzzles in Seasons. But unlike Fire Emblem Gaiden, I persevered and beat it.
Some praise I'll give is this. I love the Subrosians. They're these little guys who live in Subrosia, which is a land underneath Holodrum. They are the literal best part of the game. From the way they act to how they dance, I just simply love them. The theme of Subrosia perfectly represents how weird and awkward they are as well, and I just love the whole atmosphere of it. After completing Seasons though, I get a password. See, this password is the main attraction of these 2 games. With it, this turns Oracle of Ages into the sequel of Oracle of Seasons. This is called a link game and carries over certain data like name, your animal companion, and lets you start with 4 hearts instead of 3. I decided to take a small break and let myself get caught up on things before Oracle of Ages instead of blitzing through the 2 games, very similar to how I blitzed through the first 3 Fire Emblem games. After this quick small break, I input the password, and then I officially start Oracle of Ages.
The decision for the break was something that I made after reflecting back on Fire Emblem 1 and Fire Emblem 2, because I may have blitzed through those games, bringing me a lot of, non-happiness.
Very similar in concept, Oracle of Ages follows Link as he is warped away from the Kingdom of Hyrule and gets thrown into the land of Labrynna. Here he meets a singer named Nehru who turns out to be the Oracle of Ages. After Rasan, Impa, a caretaker from Hyrule, is revealed to be possessed by the Sorceress of Shadows, Veran. She needed Link to get to Nehru, and now Veran possesses Nehru, allowing her to disrupt the flow of time and bring sorrow to the land. Now it's up to Link and his new best buddy Ralph to travel between the past and present to get the 8 Essences of Time, find and save Nero, and restore order to Labrynna. This game was actually really good.
I was genuinely pleased with the puzzles. Even the more complex ones always led to something fun. Except for these ones. There's only 3 of them, but you're supposed to navigate a certain way in order to paint the whole room red. Believe me, they are not fun.
There is a plotline that connects the 2 games, and it involves Princess Zelda, the evil witch's twin Rova, and the revival of Demon King Ganon. Twin Rova plans on laying the flames of destruction, sorrow, and despair to revive Ganon. Destruction is lit by Onyx's efforts in Haldrum, with him making the seasons go haywire, and sorrow is lit by Veran's efforts in Labrynna by making loved ones disappear and or turn to stone. But after you beat both games, you get a secret endgame where you fight Twin Rova and Ganon.
We'll cover that later, but after beating both games, I walked away happy. I would say this, I did prefer Oracle of Ages over Seasons, mainly because Seasons was a bit brutal and Ages just kind of felt more relaxed while just solving some fun puzzles. While Seasons was more combat focused and had more brutal puzzles. I don't understand what the hell happened in Seasons, but hey, it was still pretty good. But let's get on to the important things, the little things. Where to begin would be a hard question. If the first thing in my notes literally wasn't about the game's sound, so let's talk about the game's music.
2 words describe it well. Painfully good. I like the majority of the tracks between the 2 games, with only a few being repeated. And to be honest, if those tracks weren't repeated, it would have felt off. Yet, I couldn't listen to them for too long as my head really started bothering me quickly.
It may not help that I was constantly low on hearts, as anyone who has played Zelda before will tell you it's a death sentence, as the game just loves to beat very loudly. Almost so loudly that it's painful. Oh wait, it is. Not only that though, but you also have dungeons, which are basically like hour-long labyrinths where you find an item and kill a boss. But basically, they only have music that loops after about 25 seconds or so.
Again, I want to be clear. The music isn't bad, it's just that I have sensitive hearing which leads to headaches, so it's more of a personal fault than that of the games. For tracks I like though, the Overworld theme that was used in both games was good, but I prefer the Subrosia theme in Seasons and the theme that plays with the past Overworld in Ages. The past theme is an upgraded version of the original Zelda Overworld theme, but Subrosia, just listen to it, it's fantastic, it captures the comedic quirky style perfectly. My god, I love these guys, they're easily the highlight of Seasons. Anyway, Subrosia's most popular resident is Rosa, and everyone wants to go on a date with her, so you better believe we went on a date for the main quest. She returns in a linked game file of Ages when all your items get stolen, and she makes a Tokay, which is a fucking sentient lizard human species, give back the shovel they stole from us. I hate the Tokay, and they're Ages exclusive species. You get shipwrecked and have to go and find everything. It's very tedious as it took too much time, made me miserable, and it felt completely unnecessary. You also have the Gorons and Zora, who are staples of the Zelda series. The Gorons are apparently in Seasons, but I didn't find them. But they are in Ages and have required minigames for story progression. Woo! As for the Zoras, they're not in Seasons, only Ages, but I'm still waiting to be proven wrong on that one. This here leads me to believe, though, that Oracle of Ages is trying to be more closer to the world of Zelda, while Oracle of Seasons was trying to branch out and do its own thing. I'm also probably wrong on that one, but both succeed in their own ways, and I really like them. I really like both Holodrum and Labrynna. They're super fun to explore and find hidden secrets, and they may share the same overall theme, but they're both original maps, and I truly like it.
I really enjoyed these 2 games, worlds, characters, and everything else. So, let's go into the 16 dungeons that Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages has brought upon us. Yeah, I'm being a bit more sarcastic than I should be, but trust me, we're gonna need it.
Dungeons. There are 16 of them. 8 in Oracle of Seasons, 8 in Oracle of Ages. You're tasked by the Great Mako Tree of both regions to find the 8 essences, and you do so by completing all the dungeons. I love both of the Mako Trees. The one of Seasons is actually pretty chill, and plays its role as Dementor well.
In Ages, the Great Mako Tree, she falls in love with you. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, so we're just gonna go on.
The first 3 dungeons of both games can be served tutorial dungeons, as they're really simple and give you items that you'll be using throughout the whole game. Getting to them isn't too much of a challenge and seamlessly introduces the seasons and time mechanics of both games. In Seasons, when you get the Rod of Seasons, you are to go onto a tree stump and throw the rod to change seasons. In Oracle of Ages, you get a harp. When it's played around certain locations, you warp through time or open up a portal to warp through time. Both are pretty neat. I like both of them. If only they were used more.
Also, some of the dungeons were really short. Like the first dungeon in Ages only took me 20 minutes.
Each dungeon follows a similar format. Find the map and compass, either fight the mini boss or find the feature item first, use the item to solve puzzles and find the boss key, kill the boss, get a health upgrade, and obtain the essence. It sounds repetitive, and it kind of is, but each dungeon is different. But tell me though, which game is this dungeon from? You probably couldn't tell me! I can swap around footage between the two games you wouldn't even notice! Hell, I could throw Link's Awakening DX in here and you wouldn't notice. Speaking of Link's Awakening, the Oracle games share a lot of similarities to it. In dungeons, you have these 2D platforming sections that require Link to jump across platforms using Rock's feather. They're short and honestly you won't really remember them, but I think that's how they're supposed to be. Most items and NPCs are carried over from Link's Awakening, which is really making me ask the question,
what in the name of hell did Capcom do to actually develop this game? Besides actually make it.
So yeah, in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised or mad if you confuse these games. For dungeons 4 through 6, you're going to start seeing a pattern on how to solve most puzzles. In Seasons, because the game's more combat focused, you'll run to open rooms for it to kill all the enemies in order to progress. These will be fine, there weren't so many of them, and the enemies were actually a challenge. I understand that overworld enemies are meant to be a chore, but I wish they weren't so easy. And I wish that these bats that are remote, if not every goddamn room, would go to hell. The bats don't add a challenge, they only make life a living hell and really pester me. But what's worse is getting to these dungeons. Especially Dungeon 6 in Ages. Let us walk through this one together. You beat Dungeon 5 and are told by the Maku trio Labrynna where the next one is. A Goron runs up to you and tells you that there are Goron things at the location, and we should take part in them. To save you time, you'll have to become a Goron brother and do an abysmal dancing minigame. Twice! Once in the past and again in the present. You also have to do some item trading along the way, and when it's all done, you have 2 dungeon entry keys to the second worst dungeon. You start in the past and go through the dungeon solving puzzles, getting keys, but then you hit a roadblock. Every door possible is unlocked and you can't swim in the dark water areas. You're practically stuck. So, you warp through time and enter the same location to find that you have to find another map and compass just to get the dungeon item. The item being the Mermaid suit, which ruins swimming entirely. It changes it so instead of holding a button and moving like normal, you have to constantly tap the D-pad in the direction you want to move. It's really unnatural and ruins the normal flow of movement. Once you get the item though, that's it. You go back to the past and wrap it all up by getting the boss key and fighting the boss both on land and underwater using the seed shooter.
Listen, I like the idea of doing the past and present for a dungeon, but the fact that they only did it once and the time they did it, I actually kind of found shit, isn't really that good and a bit of a deal breaker. To be completely honest, the same kind of goes for seasons. If you could change the seasons and or time to solve puzzles during the dungeon, I think that would have been really cool. But the fact that they only did it once and it was shit the one time they did it, it just doesn't really bode well.
For Dungeons 7 and 8, they're simple and the only issue I have is that the Maku tree can't sense the last essence. So they send you out into the world to look for it. It isn't hard to find though. Open up your map and see the open unexplored space. Well, why couldn't they just tell you where to go? I understand the point of the essences is to restore strength in the Maku trees and pierce the darkness to get to the final boss. But really? Gonna sense this one when you sense the other 7? I'll give the Maku tree seasons a bit of leeway as the last essence is in Subrosia, but not the one in Ages. First she loves Link and now can't find the last essence when it's not in another land? Come on! Hey, at least you run into the skeleton pirates again. Since Seasons was played first, they were stuck between the desert and Subrosia and you had to get their bell, which triggered a funny scene that reminded me of how much I love Zelda. The fact that they all get seasick is great and I was legit laughing at it. Anyway, the pirates remember Link due to this being a Link game and help him out towards the last dungeon. The final dungeon of the 2 games is very similar to the rest, and that's okay. They aren't hard by any means. Season's last dungeon, though, is very forgettable, while Ages was actually pretty unique and pretty cool. For ages, you had to do the same old crap while also finding 4 tablets in the 4 corners to get access to the boss area. I enjoyed it. Now, before I cover the final bosses, let me go over the link game and the password system. What is probably the coolest part about these 2 games that we will never see again is the link game feature. I mentioned before how you get a password when you beat either Seasons or Ages, which when put in when starting a new game, it makes it a sequel to the one you previously played, while also adding a few minor things like Rosa in Ages and Queen Ambi, the Queen of Labrynna in Seasons. But what makes it really cool is that there are characters in Labrynna who mention other people in Holodrum and vice versa. They'll tell you where to go in Holodrum, then give you a password. You take this password from Ages and go back to Seasons. You take it to the person and enter it, you do it wherever the hell they want and get a password in return. Finally, you take it to Horon, the Oracle of Secrets who lives inside the Monastery, and get the item. I went for the Master Sword in Ages as that was the sequel for me, and it felt right to have it. For those who don't know, the Master Sword is the hallmark of the Zelda series. I also like the connections between the oracles and the goddesses of the Zelda world, with the 3 of them sharing their names. Definitely intentional, but I still want to call attention to it. Anyways, on to the final battle with Onyx and Veran. The essences in Democracy pierce the darkness, allowing us to push ahead. We're thrown to an enemy gauntlet, and once we kill everything, all that's left is Onyx himself. The first phase isn't too bad, just learn his patterns and you'll be fine. But for the second phase, Onyx will use Din's crystal as a shield. If you hit it with your sword, you'll be electrocuted. Something I actually learned from the manga that helped is that you can hit Din away with the Rod of Seasons.
Yeah, this damn book I read about what, 100 times? Yeah, 100 times. It actually helped me in the final battle. That is something that I can't help but smile at.
After the second phase, we're about to be reunited with Din, but then the floor falls from under us and we're thrown to the third phase, which is arguably the worst phase. Onyx turns into this dragon-like thing, and the only way to damage him is by striking the crystal on his forehead. You are to use Rock's cape and upgrade the feather, and jump onto his hands when they can be used as platforms and strike him with your sword. Here's the problem. You will probably be low on health in the first 2 phases, and if you die, have to restart the whole fight. You have to master phases 1 and 2 in order to stand a chance, unless you're an expert or good at the game unlike me, and power to you and all that. After a lot of trial and error though, I kill Onyx, saving Holodrum and Din. Next, I play through Ages, and throughout it, Veran uses Nehru to convince Queen Ambi to build a tower to the heavens so she can find her lover. Before we fight Veran for the final time, she possesses Queen Ambi, and right before we storm the tower, Nehru tells us that Ralph, who is our best buddy, is the descendant of Queen Ambi and rushed ahead to sacrifice himself to save Labrynna and time itself. We give hot pursuit up the tower, and when we reach the top, we see Ralph easily overwhelmed by Veran. After dealing with her by shooting seeds and doing charged spin attacks, she turns into an abomination of 3 animals and jumps around the screen like an idiot. With the Master Sword, we strike her down easily and leave the tower. Yes, it really was that simple. Outside, Ralph and Nehru are waiting for us. Before we get celebrate with everyone, in becomes running saying Zelda has been kidnapped. Last time she was kidnapped, we got to play Donkey Kong with the gargoyle who has a fun personality. But this time, Twin Robot captured her and now plans on sacrificing her to light the flame of despair and revive the Demon King Ganon. We fight the first phase by hitting the spells from the Fire Sister into the Ice one and vice versa. It's hard to get the actual angle right and they move around a lot, so you will probably be dying. I didn't think things would get worse, but then the second phase happened, where the 2 sisters combine into Twin Rova and are somehow even worse. This phase alone took an hour even with me loading a save state right after the first phase. That's how terrible it really is. Twin Rova has 2 sides, fire and ice. For the ice side, you're to avoid her ice blocks and ores while running on ice, which makes you slide and not be able to dodge attacks well. In other words, it is hell. For the fire side of her, you need to avoid her attacks and the pits of lava that are around the whole arena. So, actually hell. To attack her, you have to do a spin attack a few times. This is hell as the knockback will send you far away or into the lava so you would lose your chance to attack. And to actually attack her, you have to shoot her with mystery seeds. And in case you're wondering how you would know that, you really wouldn't. Hell, I had to search it up after like 20 minutes or so. After the fight, Twin Rova sacrifices themselves and revives a crazed Ganon. Ganon is relentless and is easily the hardest boss as he so rightfully deserves to be. His attacks will take about 1/8 of your health, sometimes more, and since I only had 2 hearts going into this fight, I had to do it perfectly, which did not happen a lot, but it was easier than Twinrova and not as rage-inducing. But when I finally got the last hit on him, I was proud to say I finally completed the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages once and for all.
Now, was this whole journey worth the bosses and extra moments? Can't say for sure. I would probably lean in the direction of yes, but if I were to recommend this to a friend or something, I would recommend them try one of them and then decide for themselves if they want to play through both. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed both games, but to play 2 games for a few extra moments, and secret boss fights and whatever, to hell with it. Absolutely. If you're gonna play one, please play both. If you want to play both.
Despite me preferring Oracle of Ages, I would say you should play through Oracle of Seasons first. It feels more like a first game compared to Ages, but that decision is truly yours. In case you're wondering about why I actually didn't talk about any side content, it's because I didn't care for it that much. The Agustria seeds were items that I constantly forgot about. The training sequence in Ages was the reason why I got the Master Sword, but the fact that I'm mentioning it now should show that I forgot about it. And do not let me forget about those damn rings. They are hidden items that when appraised by Vasu, can be used to give you a variety of things like defense boosts and fighting soil for Agustria seeds. I did not care for them, nor did I feel like they deserved a bigger mention than this.
Anyways, for a conclusion, let me say this. I have always loved the Zelda franchise, and in my opinion, these 2 games really reminded me of the joy that the series used to bring me back when I was younger.
Again, and for the final time, play one of them, then decide if you should do the other. I would say you should do both, but that is your decision.
Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages contain all the joy and charm that the Zelda series is known for. Across these 2 fun and tedious games, you will walk away happy. Next time though, I will be covering Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy and Holy War and Fire Emblem 5 Horizon 776. I mean, it's not like something's going to happen midway through Fire Emblem 4 that will make me so upset that I don't play these games and I end up playing through the first 4 Mario games and their All-Stars remake. Come on, that would never happen! Anyways, until then, I'm NoctaRhys, take care.